All right, so the looks like that's working. Okay, so I guess we'll just get started. So I'm really happy to be moderating this panel today with two FIT grads who are now in the field of biofibers doing very exciting things. I'll introduce myself and then I'll let them introduce themselves. And then I have a few sort of talking points we can discuss, but otherwise I think we'll just sort of talk about your experiences and how, you know, things are going in your field, ideas for making things better, challenges, all that sort of good stuff, how you would inspire current students, things like that. So I'm Evie Rynkiewicz. I'm an ecology professor at FIT. I'm also the current Biodesign Challenge advisor for FIT. I think this is my third or fourth year, I can't remember now. It's really one of the best things I get to do here. It's really exciting to work with students at this sort of intersectional point between science and design, sort of really getting the chance to think about and create new and exciting solutions to problems in and out of the fashion field. And so with us today are Alex and Chui, who are both biodesign alums. Alex was part of the AlgiKnit team, who was the winners of their Biodesign Challenge year, the first Biodesign Challenge year, which I can't remember which year that was now. You can remind me, Alex.
2016.
2016. I was thinking to say 2017, but okay, so 2016. So FIT sort of like came out of nowhere and won that year, which was really exciting. And Chui was part of the Werewool team, which was in 2018, I want to say. Something like that.
Yes, I think so.
I think that's right. Their team was named Werewool, and now there are also, so both AlgiKnit and Werewool are companies that work at sort of the biofibers innovation field. So want to turn over to maybe Alex, you can go first, and then Chui, and then we can see where we go from there.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much for the intro. So my name is Alex Gauchevski. I am one of the co-founders of AlgiKnit. As we sort of spun out of biodesign, we decided to form a company in 2017. So I've been Chief Operations Officer since then. And what we do is we basically take seaweed and we work with polymers found within it and turn those into yarns that can be used for various textile applications and industries to be an alternative to some of the synthetic materials that are out on the market today.
Go ahead, Chui.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Chui-Lian. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Werewool. Also spun out of the Biodesign Challenge and have since and have continued my work with Thean Chiros, who's a professor at FIT, and Valentina Gomez, another former alum from FIT, from the Textile Development and Marketing Program. And at Werewool, we're developing biodegradable textile fibers with DNA programmed color and performance properties. So we're really mimicking the way nature does performance. Yeah.
Awesome. And I guess I forgot to mention before, for those that are attending as the audience in this panel, so if you have questions as we go along, please put them in the chat. We'll take the last 10-15 minutes or so to take a look at those. That's going to be the easiest way to get your questions to our panelists. So if you want to ask questions as we go along, we would love to hear it, and just stick those in the chat and I'll see them. So I guess I'll just maybe go off of some of the talking points that we have here. Since it's a sustainability conference, I thought we might start with what are some sustainability challenges that you have dealt with in the field of biofibers right now, which I guess is pretty broad. Maybe I guess you could also mention what the sustainability challenges are that your approach tries to address, and what are the sort of things that you had to try to, you know, design around, invent around to deal with those, solving those problems. And either of you can sort of go. I'll just let you go.
Yeah, I think just to start off, you know, sustainability is such a huge space right now. And for us, it's really important to understand as much as we can about the material that we're creating, as well as the impacts it has on various at various points of development, of use, basically really analyzing the life cycle of the material. And I think it's really, you know, a lot of assumptions have to be made until the material is actually out there in the world. And it's you know, amazing for us to be going through all these steps and trying to account for how much seaweed is being used, you know, how many toxic chemicals we're offsetting, how much water we're saving. But again, these are all assumptions until we actually see this out in the real world. And it's far more progressive than I think some of the, you know, historical fibers and materials have done in the past. I don't think all these questions have been answered by them, but, you know, we're definitely becoming more aware of the impact of these things. As far as things outside of AlgiKnit with sustainability challenges, there's amazing innovations coming out every day. And I think one for me that's particularly concerning to a degree is are materials that are made out of either waste product from food or other channels, because it's, you know, a limited supply. And how can we create something impactful when things are limited to begin with?
Okay, sorry, I'll go. So I think one of the main sustainability challenges that we see in the field of biofibers right now, and like what Werewool is looking to specifically address, is really we think about fiber production and the entire life cycle of the products that our fibers are going into. And so why we made Werewool and how Werewool came about was we're like, okay, well, when we're looking at like the feedstocks to our fibers, where are those coming from? What does that look like? How are they produced? You know, and then what happens after the fiber stage? You need to dye your materials. So that's kind of where how we kind of came up with Werewool is like, can we address these issues holistically by turning to biology? What does biology provide that can provide us with natural color, structural performance, replace those petroleum-based feedstocks with bio-based agricultural waste streams, with these proteins that we're using microbes to produce. So that's kind of what we're doing at Werewool. I think what's really exciting in the field, I mean, there's just so much exciting stuff. I mean, there's really amazing microbial dyes. There's, you know, the new like end-to-end recycling programs that are happening where they're just taking old clothes and turning it into new fibers. I think is like incredibly cool, and like solves a lot of the problems that we're facing as an industry and as a world right now.
So I hope that noise doesn't come out, that muting noise. That's very, I keep hearing. Anyways, so I thought that was interesting, Alex, you brought up the concerns or challenges with using waste streams, because that, you know, at least, you know, for me as an outsider, seems like a good source of raw materials, right? Because it would have gone to waste otherwise. So do you think the problem is like sourcing waste, or the scale at which things need to be made, or sort of what's the concern about, like, what are the big concerns about using waste, and would there be solutions that could address that, where waste could still be seen as sort of a productive? I mean, I think there's one of, I can't remember if it was Thean or someone else who was, you know, basically describing like waste as a design flaw. Like if there's waste in your product, that means that you haven't designed it with a full sort of life cycle. So what are maybe the issues, or are there solutions to how things are made currently that could make waste more useful, or sort of how do you see that challenge being addressed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you called that out, because I definitely want to clarify. I by no means I'm saying that things can't be designed from waste products. It is a great starting point. It is a great way to take something that could have been thrown out and make something of it. What I'm saying is that it's not necessarily a very scalable solution.
Right.
And the impact is capped at the amount of waste that you're able to use as a raw material. So when it comes to offsetting, you know, sustainability, is that really the best path forward for us? It might not be, but it might be in some situations where quantities can be lower.
Do you see challenges in your in Werewool's work, Chui, sort of where you get your resources from? Have you tried to, you know, design solutions around that?
Totally. I think what we're really building is a modular platform. So the way that we're designing the proteins that we're using, and the way the proteins that we're using that we're designing have very specific binding and enzymatic cross-linking sites that allow us to cross-link with diverse biopolymer waste streams. So the way enzymes work, you know, there's these two groups. It's like a locking key. So as long as these like the key is available for the lock, they'll bind together. And I think we really designed that platform to address that like lack of availability, or when something is waste becomes a commodity, we will have to kind of pivot. And I think that's what we're really designing into and really considering from the beginning of the design of our fibers.
Very cool.
That answers your question, but
yeah, no, I think that does. And you know, thinking about, you know, the questions that my students have, or the things that we think about in terms of, you know, how we make textiles more sustainable, it's thinking a lot about waste, or so that's the end of life, but there's also sort of the beginning of life as well. And so that's sort of what I was trying to get at, if that's sort of where I was going. Now I'm trying to think about, so these are some challenges. Something else that I thought about was, what were some successes that you've had that were maybe surprising, or things that you thought were sort of really impactful for your business that were helpful for you sort of maybe figuring out where you fit in the industry, or like why this is an important thing for you to do? Were there some, you know, positive or success stories that you sort of have in mind that you thought would be, or that you were maybe would like to share as sort of a reason why you do it, or sort of something that was surprising for you? Maybe a big question again, I think, too. Sorry.
I think, you know, we've had as a company many successes that have allowed us to get to where we are today. But I also think it's fair to shed some light on the failures that have, you know, helped us get here too.
I think that's a great way to pivot.
I think you need both to really grow and learn and evolve and find your space and your niche, and, you know, answer the questions that you might have when it comes to building a product or a business. I think for us, really early on, we learned a lot about how we wanted to position ourselves as a material. And that was really through trial and error. We were, you know, these were the early days of experimenting. You know, what sort of form did we want our material to be in? Do we want to be a yarn? Do we want to be a non-woven? Do we want to be, you know, anything of that matter? And as we started to experiment, it became a little more clear what was optimal for our material. And then the next series of that was, well, okay, we've decided on yarns, but now what sort of yarns? And again, through trial and error, you get more clarity on what is best for the product you're producing.
I think for us, our biggest success, and I think what I lean on constantly, is our community that we're building. And I mean, Alex is part of that community. I feel like I've reached out to you, and I feel like I think that's the best and most surprising thing about this field right now, is how supportive co-founders are of each other in this field. Even though we're technically competitors, it's like we're all going through this amazing journey together to make the textile industry a better place. And I think that's been like the most incredible part about this journey so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to jump in, Chui. Sorry, like
no.
I 1000% agree. I think if it isn't for this community and this space coming together, it's going to be so much harder to make these materials, you know, adoptable and sort of be at the forefront. But coming together and sharing challenges and sharing resources is helping us grow and become sort of the ubiquitous solution for the world.
So who is in this community? Who do you think are sort of your like main sort of folks in your circle that are helping you be successful, or see your failures and see how to, you know, what are the next steps if something doesn't go the way you expected? Who are those people that are your main collaborators?
guess my peers, yeah, like I feel like when, especially, it depends on what it is, right? Like I think, I think we've built up like a really good network of brands that we kind of bounce things off of, people in industry, people who are working in industry, people from FIT. I think, yeah, our peers in general have just been the most supportive in every sense, I think, from entrepreneurial work and building a business to like figuring out like technical things like where should I go to try out this spinning system, or it's just definitely just been talking to people like Alex, or yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And just to add on, I think it's depending on what the topic is, it's experts or just individuals working in that field, whether it's investors or, um, anyone in the seaweed space for us, or, other entrepreneurs also on similar trajectories. Just being able to share those contacts is extremely meaningful.
And both of you were from design or textile development. What were your majors when you were at FIT? And do you think your background has, how do you think that's affected how you approach this field or problem? Has that been a challenge or a sort of benefit for, where you are currently?
My background is in textile development and marketing, and it's the reason why I'm here today. I think, learning about every stage of production in that major has like, it was like in my fibers class, I'm learning about petroleum-based fibers, and these are the things that the industry is trying to implement. But these are the millions of things that are wrong with what's going on with the industry's current approach, and from that class to like dyeing to finishing, you just kind of hear the problems. You see that there aren't any like implemented solutions that are like holistic, that are addressing this enormous problem we have. And I think as a student, I found that really frustrating, and really motivated me to like want to work in this field.
I had an extremely similar experience to Chewy. My major was fashion design, though, but through experience, through learning, through exposure, I was like, oh my gosh, there has to be something better. And why aren't designers able to design the materials they work with? Why are we limited to what's out there right now?
Well, I was going to ask something else, and now it's left my brain. Oh, I was going to mention, okay, so I just see that more people have joined. Just to sort of add for the audience members that have joined since the start, if you have questions that you'd like to ask our panelists, please put them in the chat, and I'll make sure to relay those to Alex and Chui. Let's see. So what do you think the future looks like for sustainable textiles? So I guess maybe, I don't know how to say this. You guys are the experts. I'm sort of outside of this industry per se. Is there a way you sort of describe sort of how sustainable or how biofibers are sort of in or not in the field of fashion and textiles now? Like where do they fit maybe in the sort of, in the textile or design sphere? And where do you think they are going to be in the future?
I mean, I think the future of textiles is in circularity, right? I think that's the thing that's what we're all shooting for, is like, even if they can't be recycled into something new, they're acting as building blocks for a healthy ecosystem, right? Like we're looking at for them to be able to fully biodegrade, from the raw materials we use to the dyes to the finishes. I think every stage of production of the textiles we are using is experiencing some sort of innovation, and so it's a renaissance for sure. Yeah, I think that's where we're going for sure.
Yeah, and as far as the future of textiles, I mean, this is it. I think it's really down to solutions like what we're doing at AlgiKnit and what Werewool is creating and so many other companies. Like this is the future. And as far as like categorizations going, I think just, people are really kind of staying on the pulse here and starting to define, how one material is categorized versus another. I think it's just a natural progression of where we're heading. People want to understand, and as a result, all this data and information is making it easier to categorize.
So are people in the textile and fashion industry sort of, how do they understand what you do? Do you think it's like, are people excited or accepting of the work that your companies are doing? Are they sort of confused or scared? How does the sort of interaction between you guys who sort of are developing these new things that someone may not have seen or heard of before, and the people that might actually utilize them in their production?
That's a great question. I think there is a little bit of a disconnect, but it's good. I mean, I think that the industry's quickly learning and educating themselves on, like, you know, what does bio-based mean? Like, what are biomaterials? Like, how do you classify them? What are the things you should be looking for in a biomaterial? I think that's something that is, I think, even in like the past 4 years has changed a lot. Uh, I think there's also like a misconception on how long it takes to create a biomaterial. Like, what's the development timeline? Like, how fast can our fibers be available? I think if it was created quick, it's probably not great. So I think just understanding the development timelines it takes when creating new materials, I think is a common disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even like the history of polyester is pretty crazy. Like it didn't happen overnight. It took a really, really long time. Not that I want to support synthetic materials right now, but
It's
as
good
far
to know
as
that
like,
there's a common, I know this isn't the first time this has happened, and a lot of things that we think of as sort of usual and common weren't always that way.
right, absolutely. And as far as like emotions go and how people are responding to biomaterials, in our experience and also with other companies that are in our space, I think there's generally been a mix of all emotions. There's excitement, there's curiosity, there's hesitation, fear. Um, but all in all, generally there's been a great response to it. There's been a lot of information in the news about it, so it's becoming a little more tangible and understandable and real, and it's not like this crazy strange thing that people can't relate to, as it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But we're seeing, other companies that enter the space way before AlgiKnit or Werewool did, bring product to the market, and now people can go and buy it and experience it and see what it feels like and how it functions. And yeah, again, it's becoming more real.
So is sustainability a trend, or do you think it's like where things are going to be going in this industry? And is that, I guess, how does that look? I'm, always worried if something becomes mainstream, it's hard for it to stay sustainable. Is that the case, or do you think this is like setting us on a more sustainable path?
I think that goes back to sort of your first question, or has some relation to it, especially around the life cycle analysis. Like for us, it's important to understand what that really means and the impact our material has on, our planet as a whole. But a lot of these things are assumptions, and I think eventually every material sort of hits their cap. There's a limit. You can't just make it forever. And the way we manage that is by having all these different options and not just having one solution sort of dominate.
I don't know if I have anything to add to that. That was great.
That's fine. Well, I think you brought up a good point, Alex, and this is one thing that I hadn't, that I was thinking about as you guys were discussing is, excuse me, is that it seems like something that is a shift in how we think about a lot of sustainability issues is that there isn't one solution, that different people or parts of the world or whatever have different challenges and different perspectives and different cultures, and all those things are important when we think about what's going to work best and be sort of sustainable in that situation. I guess I don't know if I have a question or an answer or a question that's around that, but I think that's something that it's maybe tricky for people to think about, that there isn't one answer for your problem. You're not going to have like a magic bullet to fix everything, and that the solution might be a bunch of different solutions.
Yeah, I mean, when you were describing that, it just made me think of architecture. Like there's certain styles of architecture or materials used in architecture that work in one area of the world and that just would never, last in another area of the world. So yeah, it's never, I don't think it's ever a one solution situation. There has to be multiple options. But I also, don't see this as being a trend. I realize I didn't answer your other point in your previous question. I think this is, um, we're evolving so many systems um, and just there's this huge shift happening. It's not a temporary thing. This can't just be like a one season solution because of all these resources that are going into this industry and the changes that are happening. It's definitely for the long run.
Any thoughts, Chui, about sort of multiple solutions or, how sustainability in this field might be in the future?
I mean, I definitely don't think there's no room for it to be a trend, right? Like this is necessary change, right? I think that's important to note. I think, I think that, diversity in so many ways, in so many fields, diversity is important, and just textiles is another one of them. As a textile developer, it's like you have so many different fibers that you use for different applications, and I think that's going to continue to ring true.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes sort of maybe disappointing that it's surprising that it takes so long for people to realize that diversity is so important in all these ways, like diversity of people's perspectives and people's experiences and your resources. Like diversity is always important. Ecologists sort of understand this, and it's maybe it takes a little while for it to trickle down to other industries, but that always seems to be the solution, is like we need to think in a more diverse way in a lot of different perspectives.
And I think that's what's really cool about this like field of biomaterials that is growing, is that like you get diverse perspectives. Like this is where like design and science really come and meet each other to create something new. And I think that's what's really exciting about it, is that like it's these traditional silos that are like merging right now. And yeah, it's just what good diversity does.
And this might be, I haven't prepared this question. This is just one thing that I've sort of thought about, or, when I look at the materials I use in my biodesign class and all the experts that I sort of see as sort of like my, go-to sort of people to discuss their work, like you guys, and, the other sort of forefront people in biodesign, is they're not the usual suspects, you want to say. Like there's a lot of women, there's a lot of people of color, there's a lot of indigenous people that are sort of using their experiences and their perspectives. Is that from is that something that you've experienced, that this sort of field is maybe different than maybe what I'm not sure if you've experienced a different sort of group of people in sort of the conventional fashion industry, or maybe this is just a different perspective, from what I've been viewing. But how do you sort of view sort of the other folks that are doing a lot of exciting stuff in the field? Is it different or the same as maybe what's happening in sort of your standard fashion industry?
Yeah, compared to standard fashion, I mean, I had a very short stint in in anything outside of AlgiKnit and in the fashion industry. It's far more diverse, but I think it's because of the individuals it attracts. I think you have to be very curious and like willing to take on risk. And I think from that nature, it attracts different like people people that think differently. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with their race or their sex or their ethnicity, but that is also a big factor.
Like maybe you don't see like yourself fitting in the sort of usual state of things, and you want to sort of make a space where you think you fit your ideas or your goals or perspective or something like that.
Yeah, you have that sort of motivation to be able to kind of be in this field. I think because you're up against a very big industry to change, for sure. So it's just a different type of mindset.
Yeah, I wonder if there is like a general label for the biomaterial space that's used. Like in tech, I think there's a very general label, like, Silicon Valley, something like that. But I don't know if there is for the biomaterial space.
Biomaterials, right? You have to invent it. Seems like there's a lot of term inventing and term reinvention in the biodesign field in general. Because I think it's because it's new and everyone sort of is coming at it from a different perspective. Like you can come at it from a fine arts perspective, or you can come at it from a applied perspective, or a sort of, um, maybe some, yeah, like a more sort of scientific approach. There's a lot of different ways you can
Yeah.
get to the same outcome, I guess, or get to the same field. And so everyone sort of has this different path.
Yeah, I mean, like you see, like those Ginkgo Bioworks does those artist residencies that are really cool. I mean, there's just like so many different ways people are entering this space and applying, creating and using biomaterials. I think that's the exciting part.
Right. I think every industry and discipline is extremely relevant in the conversations that are being had in biomaterials, biofibers, because it's so new and there's no clear path that's been paved. There's no clear direction. It's all exploratory.
And that can ultimately maybe end up with it being more inclusive because there's sort of no expectation as to sort of who is someone
Absolutely.
that does this, which I think is refreshing and nice to see that. We have one question that I can go to. Let me just read it. It's a long one. It's from Sabrina, who's apparently a former student of mine. I don't see her last name, so I don't, but hi, thanks for joining us, Sabrina. Um, so she was a fashion design major, sustainability and ethics minor. She's trying to figure out how to execute ideas, how to collaborate, where to look for opportunities. So, are there advice? And that's actually one of my questions. Do you have advice for sort of how students currently oh, thanks, Sabrina. I now see your last name. Thanks. Nice to see you. So, how would you maybe give advice to students currently at FIT as to maybe where they would go for preparing for, working in sustainable fashion or the textile industry? Are there sort of experiences after, I guess, both of you went pretty much straight into working on your businesses, but are there sort of other experiences that you think would be really beneficial for students looking to sort of do some, kind of intersectional type work in the fashion or textile industry?
Yeah, I think when I was interning at different fashion companies and when I was working in the industry, sustainability was really important to me. So I would just advise to like get involved in any way you can. I went to the innovations department, I went to the innovations team. I wanted to meet people and talk to people. And I also proposed new solutions. I was like, what do you guys think of this? Like, is there any possibility here? I think, do that within your existing position, but also do that outside. Find organizations, find opportunities to just get involved and get your foot in the door.
I don't think I have anything to add to that. I mean, yeah, there's so many really amazing organizations now that you can get involved with, or there's, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation hosts seminars and they've created like a Slack community. There's just a lot of really great networks that are being built right now that you can join and get involved. If you're in New York, there's GenSpace, and I think that's a really great outlet if you're interested in more of like the science aspects of like engineering cells to create new materials. Yeah, there's a lot of different things. You can always reach out to me and we can chat and we can find something for you if I can try and help.
I don't remember if I've put your Instagram handles. It's at AlgiKnit, at Werewool, WEREWOOL.
Yes.
So that might be ways to reach out pretty easily to Alex and Chui.
Also,
Yeah, for
a
sure.
social media intern if anyone's interested.
Ooh, social media intern working for Werewool, that would be amazing. I think Biodesign Challenge is looking for someone as well, but so
Yeah,
awesome.
I think if there's a will, there's a way, and don't let slight obstacles or challenges get in the way of letting you get to, your ultimate goal and your ultimate dream.
I think what you guys brought up about sort of you know, making a community of people that want to do change, you know, if it's like your friends that you like, you know, are all in your major, or even like friends in your class that like to think about things in a certain way, you know, that's a good way to sort of just start sort of challenging each other and thinking about things and from different perspectives. Also, I always, again, this is, we'll bring it back to the conference. I am always really excited for all the people that I get to see speak at these conferences we have every year. They're always really inspirational. Someone else in a previous year said that what Alex said is basically, if sustainability is important to you, just bring it to where you are, even if you're not a sustainability officer or something. You know, there's chances for you to make big changes sort of at any point, as long as you're sort of making that part of the conversation. And a lot of you know, the students in the sustainability minor have that experience now from your classes in the sciences or in the sort of humanities, thinking about how people think about sustainability. That's all really great experience that you can bring to whatever position that you're in. I'm trying to think.
Agree, absolutely. Again, just going back to what we were talking about before, I mean, this is such an inclusive space that you don't have to have a sustainability degree or, you know, relevant experience to get involved.
Yeah, asking questions and sort of starting that discussion is probably some of the biggest things you can do.
Right, yeah.
Great, thanks for that question, Sabrina. Let's see. I don't have very many other prepared questions. So maybe we already talked about this, but we talked about sort of building your community. Are there any sort of surprising like collaborations or connections that you've made over your time working at Werewool and AlgiKnit in terms of, you know, people that have wanted to work with you or people that have made a difference in sort of solving a problem? Are there sort of interesting connections that you made that you didn't expect when you started out? Maybe not.
I mean, I think it's really amazing how the industry is mobilized from like really high fashion brands to like fast fashion brands. Like it's pretty incredible the change that they're trying to implement for their products and supply chains. So I think that's been like and actively trying to, and I think that that's like really exciting to see and really great to be part of those conversations with these brands.
Yeah, I think like it's been really interesting to see what sorts of people have been reaching out or inquiring. You know, we've sort of gone out and started talking about the fashion industry and creating a solution for the fashion industry, but that's like that didn't stop anyone from other, you know, random industries to reach out to us. And I think that's really amazing and shows the need for textile alternatives across the board, not just in fashion, but in, you know, things like home goods or automotive or whatever it is. So this is this industry is starting to creep into you know, the world beyond fashion, which is, I think, extremely exciting. And the other sort of the connections we made early on were very different than the connections we made as the company has grown. But I think some of the most instrumental and impactful have been those of other bio, you know, founders in the space. Just to be able to share the experience and the journey and not feel like you're, you know, trying to solve these crazy challenges all on your own.
Do you think that sort of collaborative nature of the biofibers field is different than how it is to work in sort of conventional fashion? Do you think there's more of a, I don't know, congenial sort of collaboration between your companies than say like, I don't know what a typical sort of, you know, H&M versus Gap or something, you know, are there different interactions between biofiber companies than your regular fashion companies?
I think definitely. I think it's a very unique community for sure, a unique, very supportive community. But I think the industry is also changing because I think we're seeing like these brand consortiums supporting these new materials, and like the industry is really coming together because I think it's the only way that we can see the change that we need, right? Is if they're coming together to support companies like ours from an early stage, like that's so I think there's just
Yeah.
shifts in that sort of thinking of where we're not adversaries anymore. It's just we're all working towards a common goal, which is really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak for maybe the more traditional companies in the fashion sector. I think historically there was a pretty intense divide from company to company, and that was felt. You wouldn't reach out to people from another company and say, hey, which factory are you working with? That just wasn't I guess part of the dialogue. But I think that's a lot more appropriate between, the biomaterials companies, maybe a little more typical too. So yeah.
But that's nice to hear that the industry seems to be really accepting. I think that has been bringing back to your other point, Chewy, that it was maybe more accepting than you expected, and it's been sort of a good way to sort of get support and collaborations and things like that. I think that's really nice to hear, because yeah, you want to hope that people in these positions are like you said, taking it seriously. Like, this is our solution to a problem that really is not going to be solved if we just do nothing. So taking a really sort of forward thinking approach is what needs to happen. So it's really nice that that's what your experience is. Hopefully that's where we sort of keep going in that positive direction.
Agreed. I hope it keeps going.
So yeah, I don't see any other questions from the audience. Audience members, feel free to put new messages in. Okay, here's one of my biodesign students. So how can you advocate for sustainability without appearing to be looking down on them? Okay, so this is a good question. I actually ask this question to some of my students sometimes. How do you educate or communicate with people about sustainability issues without either overwhelming them or making it seem like you are the expert and know better than someone else? How do you sort of make that connection, or talk to people about what you do and why it's important? Is there tools or facts, or sort of how do you actually make that, how do you educate people in sort of a productive way?
That's a really good question. I don't think there's one right answer for this. I think it's the situational approach. Like, some people will be a lot more open to receiving information and learning and wanting to make change, and will therefore, sort of be reciprocating to the comments that you're making. But then there are people that really just, it's going to take a lot more work than just to tell the story once and just say, this is, the solution. You're going to have multiple conversations and present things in different ways, and find a way to like get them personally engaged, and sort of relate to the situation. But I think it's mostly just about telling a story and understanding where the other person is coming from, and not forcing any ideas on people.
I think like you can model the change you want to see in the world, right? So just by kind of behaving the way you want the world to be, those conversations can come up in a more natural manner where you're like, why are you doing that? Like, why do you have silverware in your bag all the time? Well, this is the reason why. I feel like that maybe that's sometimes like an easy way to approach conversations like that. But
Yeah, that's great. Having that personal connection, either from your experience and explaining to someone else, or sort of trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes and think about their personal experience, definitely seems like a good thing to think about. Because someone might think about sustainability from a different perspective. Maybe they're worried about the cost of something. Maybe they're worried about the sort of social impact, or maybe they're worried about the oceans or something. How do you sort of bring someone into that conversation in a way that they can connect with? I think that's really great. So let's see. I think we can kind of take this as long as we'd like. I think we've been talking for a decent amount of time. if the audience has any more questions, maybe you can put them in the next minute or so. Are there anything else that we haven't talked about yet that you thought was sort of maybe useful as, you know, your experience as an FIT student? Is there something that was, you know, something that you thought was really impactful in sort of how you built your business or how you sort of keep going when things are tough? Are there sort of things that you want to share that we haven't talked about yet that have been helpful for you at any point?
Yeah, something I think that is important to bring some color to, and maybe from a different perspective than Chui, you said earlier about how, you know, some companies don't understand how long it takes to, you know, create a new material. I think from the flip side, it takes a really long time to build a business. Like, you might have a great idea, but you can't just turn things around and sell product right away. I mean, maybe in some special circumstances, but typically it takes a really long time, and you need to be 1000% committed to it for the long run. And I just want to call that out because there are so many great ideas that sometimes just sort of fall apart too quickly because that time commitment and those resources weren't accounted for before jumping in and pursuing something. But it's an amazing journey, and if anyone's ever interested, I say go for it.
Any thoughts, Chewy? Any sort of experiences or things that you thought were really sort of impactful in your time, either at FIT or as a business person?
I mean, my time at FIT, I think it was such an amazing community of people. It's an amazing resource. That FIT is an amazing resource. It's where we, you know, our foundations from. Yeah, Alex is right. Building a business is very hard, and it takes a community to do it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just on another note around FIT, there are so many resources available at FIT, and I think, again, if you are interested in something, get involved. But I also think FIT has this great way of pushing the limits. And after experiencing that for 4 years, you know, learning how far I can take myself and my interest, that's been translated into what I'm doing today. Like, constantly seeing how much more can I learn? How much more can I do? How many more people can I connect with? Like, whatever it is, I think just like that hunger for learning and curiosity that FIT instills has been really relatable for me beyond.
That's great. Just one more question popped up in the chat. I think that's I'm happy to hear how impactful FIT was for you both. I think that's what I like to see as a sort of I'm a science person, but so I get to work with all of the students who maybe aren't traditional science students, and it's always really exciting to see how creative you guys can be and sort of how you can think at these, you know, sort of pushing these limits and how you sort of try to address challenges is always really, really exciting. And I think that's, yeah, where it always gives me hope for the industry to get better, because you guys are sort of so creative and so sort of passionate about making big changes that I mean, obviously you guys are sort of examples of how you can really make these changes happen if you think that's where things need to go, which is great. So just one last question was about, you know, where our resources come from. There's a group listening from Florence, so that's awesome. I'm glad you guys are joining. So we talked about this a little bit before, but maybe you guys have a little bit of, you could comment on this. And it's about using old garments to make new yarn. We talked about using sort of waste food materials to make new materials. What do you guys have you guys have experience or thoughts about sort of using old textiles or garments to make new materials? What do you think sort of the issues or benefits are for that sort of solution?
I mean, I think it's a great solution. I mean, there's so many old garments in this world that we need to find new uses for. I think it's it's limited by application, right? So like every product that we use or every product we create requires a different type of textile with different performance properties. So I think that, yeah, it's another great solution to the problems that we're facing, for sure.
Yeah, agreed. And I think with, you know, just as a limiting factor in that, materials get worn down, like their, you know, their durability and other characteristics when they're reprocessed multiple times. So I think there is, you know, sort of an end date to recycling garments. Maybe you can only do it 5 or 6 times. I'm not sure what the, you know, what the number would be, but as it would be an ideal circular solution, but I think there, you know, there are other items that are going to have to come into play to support that. Maybe there is an integration of some new materials with old materials to make them last longer.
I think that gets to the point that you all made before, is that there really isn't one solution. Like you said, each kind of textile or home goods application or whatever it is needs a different property with different materials. So there may not be one solution. So maybe new materials are appropriate in a certain quantity, maybe used materials or biomaterials, sort of, you know, how they're applied can all be done sustainably as sort of like a, you know, a multifaceted kind of solution. Well, this has been really great. It's been really cool to talk to you guys. Since I've had sort of some experience with you all from the Biodesign Challenge, but I haven't gotten to speak to you in a while. So it's really exciting to hear about what your companies are doing, how you think the field is moving. Sounds like it's moving in a positive direction, which is great. And you guys are definitely at sort of the forefront there with you know, creating these really exciting, sustainable textiles. So I guess we'll sort of keep an eye on you all, and we'll make sure to put your Instagram handles up on the website or some other way to get those to the people who want to talk to you. Are there other ways that people should be contacting you, or things you want to sort of share with the audience before we leave about how they might want to learn more about you guys or anything like that?
That's great. Thanks so much for having us, Evie. It's nice seeing you again. It's been a really long
It's so
time.
exciting to see you all. Hopefully next time it's in the same space.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to learn more about AlgiKnit, check us out on our website, algiknit.com, and our Instagram and Twitter is also at AlgiKnit. We're constantly sharing what other people are doing or any new information in the industry, and also what we're up to. So we just want to be an information source for everyone.
Awesome. Well, so exciting. Really great that we all got to talk. So we'll keep an eye on what you guys are up to. So thanks again for being guests for the FIT Sustainability Conference.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.